So far this episode, we've gotten quite a bit of agent changes that have shaken up the meta in more ways than one. And along with the meta shifting through balance changes and growth of the player base, the game has evolved along with some key ultimates that define the meta. What is going on, ProGuides family? It is your host, Sergeant Frost, and today we have our agent ultimate tier list for you guys. This will be ranking the ultimates kind of like how we do our agents tier list, but with slightly different criteria, so let's hop right into it. So for this ultimate tier list, let's quickly talk a bit about our criteria for ranking ultimates. For us, S tier will be ultimates that have insane upfront value, that are strong enough for teams to actively play around or craft game plans around to win a round. These ultimates define how a round will be played out, and as a result also define the meta in some ways as well. Our A tier will consist of ultimates that are great ultimates to use, that can easily give your team a better chance at winning the round, but aren't usually round defining ultimates that require a game plan. You could throw these out in any given round, and probably give yourself or your team a good shot at turning the round in your favor, but it rarely outright wins the round or affects a whole team like the S tier can. For the B tier, we have ultimates that are decent but have some big caveats for them to be strong. And for the C tier, we have ultimates that tend to be hard to utilize well, and have very niche requirements, or they just don't provide a whole lot of value up front. However, let's first say that even if it's in the C tier, it does not mean it doesn't have a high potential value when used by a skilled player. It's just a little harder, and won't be as versatile as other ultimates. Anyways, let's head right into the tier list. At the top of the S tier, we have another familiar face that hasn't changed since our last ultimate tier list, and that is Killjoy. Just like BMW, Killjoy's German engineering has allowed her lockdown ultimate to stay as the best ultimate in the game hands down. At the moment, there is no other ultimate in Valorant that forces a whole team to respect its threat so much that they have to adjust their setup. Unless the enemy team has an ultimate like Sova or Brimstones to counter it, there is little that you can do except leave its zone or get detained. Lockdown is a round-defining ultimate that can win rounds for free if used in the right time and place. Lockdown is also one of the only ultimates that has a meta-defining uses on attack as well as defense. Killjoy can use her ultimate as a free sight take on attacker side, or even as a round-securing ultimate that stalls the retake. Or on defense, it can function as a powerful retake ultimate, or as a preemptive sight denial tool so that rotations and flanks can come in. Killjoy's ultimate has many uses, and in basically every situation, forces the enemy into unfavorable positions, either pushing it or running for the hills. And that is why Lockdown is the best ultimate in the game currently, and probably will be for the foreseeable future. Taking the number 2 spot in the S tier will have to be Sova's Hunter's Fury. Hunter's Fury is one of the best ultimates in the game because of its long range, versatility, and kill potential on multiple targets. Apart from its ability to snipe players out of the server through walls and across the map, one of the biggest reasons why Hunter's Fury provides so much value in the meta is also because it's one of the few counters to Killjoy's ultimate. Outside of being a direct Killjoy ult counter, Hunter's Fury is great at finding picks or scattering rushes trying to deathball into sites. Another thing to note is that Sova's kit is well designed for his ultimate, and can easily be used solo when used after a drone or a recon arrow. It's also very easy to use off the minimap, and strong Sova players can often snipe players just by understanding the map layout. But of course, Sova's ultimate as well as his utility has some interesting tricks that you need to know first before being able to find consistent value. That's why if you're looking to learn the tips and secrets for any agent that will let you play them to their max potential, we suggest you ask our Radiant and Immortal level coaches on ProGuides.com who are trained to help you at any level. So whether you're a newcomer or a seasoned veteran, there's always training methods to learn and insight to be gained through coaching. So if you're trying to make your rank climb journey as smooth as possible, then we encourage you to come give us a visit. The newest face in our S tier for ultimates on this tier list is Viper. Viper's ultimate has gone from underwhelming to one of the best map control ultimates in the game, especially as the meta developed with Viper being a must pick on certain maps. Part of this ultimate's development to become an S tier ultimate is not only due to changes to her decay mechanic, which increased the immediate threat, but also due to the community improving and learning new ways to utilize Viper's ultimate for map control. Now that people have lineups for ultimates and know how to play around them well, Vipers can single-handedly win a round with their ultimate either through securing crucial map control or even clutching up like Hiko does. Viper's Pit is powerful both offensively and defensively because it takes map control instantly and wards off opponents from the area unless they want to take heavily disadvantageous fights. The only downfall is that Viper's ultimate is hard to deploy at times, and it isn't as versatile as ults like Sova or Killjoy, but once placed down, it becomes very hard to contest. Since Viper's Pit now allows her team to take space on the map so dominantly, her ultimate has moved up into the S tier for this tier list. At the top of the A tier for this tier list, we have Phoenix's Run It Back. Run It Back has high team value because it serves multiple purposes when used. Phoenix gets self-value out of it because he gets a free life to run in and potentially kill enemies and create space for his team. And Phoenix's team gets value out of his ultimate because Phoenix ult can entry without fear of losing a man. This same logic applies to the defender side for retakes or early plays. Factoring in how it only requires 6 ultimate points, it's a high impact ultimate that is quite cheap, which is why you should feed ult orbs to Phoenix so that he can run it down on the enemy team. To be honest, Phoenix's ultimate is probably the only real redeeming quality of his kit, but it's definitely strong enough to make a Phoenix a scary agent to deal with in the right hands. Skye's ultimate takes the second spot in our A tier due to how versatile it is. Seeker's is an ultimate that serves many purposes and can be used in multiple different situations. Seeker's first and foremost is an intel gathering ultimate. It can locate and find enemy locations, which gives great workable info for your team. Even if the Seeker's doesn't manage to hit its target, it still provides value in a few ways. When a Seeker's gets close to its target, it lights up blue on the minimap, and makes a special sound when it gets closer to the enemy. On top of that, most enemies will shoot out the Seekers, and that can let you know where the enemies are through sound cues. Most Skye players don't expect the Seekers to actually make contact with the enemy and blind them, but it's always a plus. You can also use them as a distraction to buff up a site take by throwing out Seekers and then supporting it with a flash in before the whole team executes into the site. Although it's not a round winner, it can be used at any time to provide some great value and pressure for your team, and that alone makes her ultimate quite valuable. No longer in the S tier is Sage's Resurrection. While it's theoretically a powerful ultimate that can make around a 6v5, it's not as easy to utilize in practice and is usually somewhat risky. If you die in a bad position where the Sage can't get to you safely, then you can't do anything about it. Sage can only res when it's safe and at a good time. So in reality, this ultimate is not all powerful because it can't be used whenever and wherever. Sometimes you'll find yourself holding on to your ultimate for rounds at a time looking for a good opportunity to res your teammate. At the same time, the community as a whole has improved a lot, and people keep track of where Sage can resurrect a teammate, and sometimes even bait dead bodies, which is not fun for Sage players. So although Sage's ultimate is high value and can totally turn the tables on a round, it's much harder to use practically and as a result lacks a little versatility. Next up in the A tier, we have Breach's Rolling Thunder. Rolling Thunder is a great ultimate because it essentially is a go button for your team. Whether you're trying to 5-man rush a bomb site when attacking, or if you're trying to retake a site on defense, Rolling Thunder will always provide great value in crowd control. If you have a good Breach player that is communicating when he's going to use his ultimate, Rolling Thunder can potentially turn into 3 easy kills when paired with a flash or stun. This ult is literally one of the best team-oriented ults in the game, especially after it got several buffs and now its area of effect is wider and the line explosions now tick faster as well. Unfortunately, the only downfall is that it can hurt its own teammates, and Breach as a whole isn't a very popular agent. People don't know how to play with or around a Breach, and that can hurt his ultimate in practice. For our last pick in the A tier, we have Reyna's Showstopper. We know some of you may be scratching your head since this ultimate only affects Reyna as she's the only one using it, but that's not the full extent and power that her Showstopper provides. More than just being a kill ultimate, Showstopper provides a ton of pressure in-game. Since the beginning of Valorant, every player has known that when you hear the sound of a Reyna's ultimate, it's time to run for the hills. It's hard to contest a flying Reyna's ulting, and I think that unless you're in Radiant, you likely won't have the aim to consistently kill Reyna before she launches the rocket. This doesn't apply only to when she uses it either. Many players will actively avoid contesting a Reyna's position when they know she has an ultimate, and that can mean space created by the threat of her ultimate while also causing enemies to hesitate. Not to mention, it's also kind of easy to aim the rocket, and unless you're pulling off Sabrosa ults left, right, and center, you'll most likely get a few good picks out of the Showstopper every game. Starting off the B tier, we have Brimstone's Orbital Strike. Orbital Strike was one of the best AoE damage ultimates in the game for a time, but as the meta developed, people have become much better at avoiding it, so much so that it's rarely useful for securing kills. On top of it having a hard time securing kills on enemies, this ultimate isn't something that you use liberally in random places. You usually would try to use it to clear out small enclosed spaces where people like to hide, kind of like U-Haul or Hookah for example. As it stands, the main value of Brimstone's ultimate is just to counter lockdowns, and maybe act as a glorified post-plant Molotov. And even though its potential is decent, it's just not worth picking a Brimstone over an Omen or an Astra, even if his ultimate might be more practically powerful. Let's start this off by saying that Astra being in B tier is a big asterisk, and that's due to the fact that Astra's wall is hard to play around in an uncoordinated environment like solo queue. In order for Astra to get the full value out of her wall, everyone on your team has to be on the same page when it comes down, and know how to properly cover and play around the wall. But in solo queue, you can't micromanage every little thing for your teammates, and players are not very coordinated, so an Astra wall is significantly weaker in these situations due to these circumstances. We think that Astra's ultimate is definitely more like a mid to top A tier ultimate in coordinated environments, due to its ability to slice up the map and provide map-wide information denial. Pro teams have amazing protocols to use their Astra wall, and it's always cool to see how teams play around the wall in pro play, but unfortunately that's not going to happen in ranked. Next up, Cypher's ult is in B tier because even though it's great information, it functions sort of like a Skye ult by virtue of pinpointing enemy locations. However, it can't be used whenever, it doesn't cause a distraction, and it also doesn't reveal long enough for any actionable use to secure a kill. Don't get me wrong, revealing the whole enemy team is a great benefit, but it's only good for that and nothing else. It also requires a dead body as well, which is a big caveat that makes Cypher's ultimate not as versatile. In general, while the information gain is great to make fast rotations and locate weaknesses on the map, The value of his ultimate is not amazing and is usually just a cool side benefit to playing Cypher rather than something that defines his kit. A lot of you may be wondering why KO's ult is so low on the tier list when he literally just got a buff in this patch. KO's ultimate is good but not great, so let's explain why. While KO's suppression mechanic is great, and the buffs have made it even more consistent, one of the biggest benefits of his ultimate has always been the idea that KO can be revived when downed. And people, including us, compared his ultimate to that of Phoenix's at the start. But as KO released, I think we all realized very quickly just how wrong that comparison is. If anything, a real comparison would be that picking up a KO is kind of like defusing the spike. KO can't move while he's downed, and the only times you really get killed is if you're in a position where the enemies can shoot you. That means you're probably in a bad position to be picked up, which also means your teammates need to be in a bad position to pick you up as well. So picking up a KO is kind of like trying to defuse a spike, which we all can agree is not a safe task unless you're winning already. So being able to pick up KO usually means you guys probably won the site take, which begs the question whether being picked up even matters nearly as much as something like a Phoenix reviving automatically. But of course, KO's ultimate is still great for suppression value, and that in itself is what makes KO's ult decent. Reyna's ultimate sits at the bottom of B tier because it's a selfish ultimate that really only makes Reyna stronger. Yet at the same time, it's a considerable power boost to Reyna that can let her take over a round single-handedly, whether it's via clutching or tearing open a bomb site. In a way, you can view Reyna's ultimate as a kill ultimate because it's meant to augment Reyna whenever she gets kills. But at the same time, that also means that the mileage you get off Reyna's ultimate depends heavily on your player's skill, and it isn't as safe as other kill ultimates like Sova or Raze. So the upfront value isn't significant, which is why we can't rank this ultimate higher. However, the potential is great for this ultimate since every duel you win, you basically heal to full health while also having a get out of jail free card to reposition or escape. Just don't peek an ulted Reyna one-on-one. It pains me to have to put this ultimate here because it's one of the most fun ults to use in the game, but Jett's Blade Storm is one of those ultimates that acts as a free gun, which also means that if you're good at the game, this ultimate is great. But if you're not 10s, this ultimate most likely won't be as impactful as you see in highlight reels. Also, Jett Knives got hit with a big nerf just a few days ago, with the right click no longer resetting on kill, which means you are pretty much forced to left click if you want to reset your knives. With that being said, you can say goodbye to the Korean Jett ult montages that you see pop up on TikTok every couple of days. This nerf mainly affects lesser skilled Jett players who rely too much on the right clicks to string kills, but it's still a big nerf that can change how Jett players approach utilizing their ultimate. But of course, her ultimate right click is still great for securing a kill at close range, so it's not horrible by any means. Jett's ultimate is a high potential ult that doesn't provide a ton of upfront value, which also means that it's hard to justify giving her knives a high ranking only based on how crazy her highlight plays can be. Next up in C tier is Yoru's Dimensional Drift. You can tell that Riot intended for this ultimate to be a stealth-like ninja ultimate that Yoru could use to sneak behind enemy lines with and come out with multi-kills. But that is not how this ultimate ended up playing out at all after it was released. First of all, there's just too much noise and lag with leaving the ultimate, which means that you really can't come out of it unless your opponent is either flashed or not paying close attention. Also, you can't do anything except run and get info while ulting, and then most likely teleport back because it's a little too dangerous to pop out in the middle of enemies. This is a nice ultimate to run in with and scout out opponents, but against higher skilled players, that's pretty much the limit outside of the occasional bucket kill if the enemy is caught sleeping. However, this ultimate is still useful in some situations, and it can create a lot of chaos that your team can capitalize on. But the downfall is that you can rarely rely on Yoru's ultimate to achieve a lot. In many cases, it just feels far too high variance to create consistent advantages. Lastly on the tier list, we have Omen's ultimate, From the Shadows. Don't get me wrong, this is a great ultimate in certain situations, and it's arguably one of the best mobility ultimates in the game because of how quickly it deploys. But the reason it's at the bottom of our tier list is because that's pretty much it. This ultimate only benefits Omen when it comes to mobility. The mobility is nice to have in a match, but in hindsight, players in this stage of Valorant's lifecycle are getting really good at sniffing you out when you use your ultimate. So it's often just used as a mini Cypher camera on a part of the map before being cancelled. In rare cases, you can commit to the ultimate and maybe pull off a flank, but it's still a huge risk since you have no idea where the enemies are. And if you're not careful, they can hear whether you're committed or not depending on where you ulted at. In most cases, Omen's ultimate just doesn't feel very safe to act on, and the best uses has always been in those clutch situations where you can take the bomb and teleport to another site. That's pretty much the only high value situation for Omen's ultimate, but in general, every other use is lukewarm at best, and may be good if you're a 300 IQ Omen player. Well guys, that's all we have for our best agent ultimate tier list. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you hit that bell icon to ensure you stay up to date with our latest videos and ahead of the competition. This has been your host Sergeant Frost, and I'll see you all again in the next one.